Welcome to the DWI Guide podcast, where defenders of the Constitution assemble to prepare for courtroom battle and firm owners gather to develop marketing strategies that will revolutionize the practice of criminal defense. Here's your host, the DWI guy, Jake Minnick.
Hello, fellow freedom fighters, and welcome to episode 124 of the DWI Guide podcast. On today's episode, I have a great guest, Zac Cohen, on the podcast talking to us about being the local guide. Zac was born in Salisbury, North Carolina, graduated from West Rowan High, then attended on a football scholarship, Wingate University, played football for all 4 years there. After graduating from Wingate, he went to get his Juris Doctor from Texas Wesleyan University, which is now Texas A&M University School of Law. And then after that, came back to North Carolina and set up his shop in Monroe, where he has steadily grown his practice. And Zac talks about the ways of how he has grown his practice really from kind of like the grassroots level of going out, meeting people, making connections, how he has kind of built this amazing practice over time. Zac went into law school knowing that he wanted to focus on traffic tickets, and he's probably the only person that I've ever known that kind of had that focus going into law school, at least that I've actually talked to about that. I've heard a number of other attorneys saying I wanted to be a criminal defense lawyer. But Zac shares his story of why that kind of was his focus as he went into law school. And even though he was going to school in Texas, law school in Texas, he knew he wanted to set up shop here in North Carolina. So Zac is an incredibly passionate lawyer. He advocates for taking DWI cases to trial. He cares deeply about his clients. He cares about his local community. And I think we're going to learn a lot from Zac today, and excited to share this episode with y'all. Zac, tell us before we get too deep into this, what kind of brought you into law in the first place? What was kind of the drive for going to law school?
Well, I grew up in Salisbury, North Carolina, and my family owned a roofing company.
Okay.
And I would have been a fourth generation industrial roofer, and that just was not for me. Family businesses are difficult anyway, and that's difficult work.
That is difficult work. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Did you get a couple of summers in on that front to experience that?
The last summer that I worked for the family business, I was playing football at Wingate, and I was home for the summer. So I had responsibilities with conditioning and weights and everything, and also working on the roof over 40 hours a week. And it was miserable.
It's probably hard to take in enough liquids when you're doing all that.
Yeah, I don't know. It was impossible. I mean, up at 4 a.m. and go to work, try to get stuff done, tear off the roof and re-roof it before the heat of the day, which is usually around 3 or 4. Never worked. You know, we were always on the roof till 5, and then I had to rush to the gym to go meet my workout partner. And then after that, go run, then collapse into the bed, wake up and do it again. So it was,
you were the best conditioned athlete on the field, at least. So,
well, that was the last for me. And my grandmother, she always said, well, you should be a lawyer or a stockbroker, because they had a lot of business dealings with lawyers and a lot of business with stockbrokers. And I'm not good at picking stocks. I pay somebody else to do that for me. So this is what we decided to do. I had to struggle to get my grades up, because during the season at Wingate, I took 18 hours a couple semesters, and it hurt my GPA. So when it came time to know, hey man, if you want to get into law school, you better bust it. So I did, and fortunately got into law school and eventually passed the bar. So
what position did you play?
Defensive end.
Okay. I got the football helmet in the background there. I love it.
Oh yeah.
In law school, was there something that kind of started to drive you towards criminal law, or what was law school like for you? What did that journey look like?
So I went to law school in Texas. My mother lived out there, so I was able to live with her a few years, my 1L and 2L year, and then got married. My wife moved out there for my last year. But from day one, I told everybody in my law school that I want to go back to Monroe, North Carolina, and represent people with speeding tickets.
That's awesome.
You
knew. So you knew that going in. That was like, yeah, that's awesome.
Absolutely. My wife's from Monroe, and I had dealings with lawyers who represented people on speeding tickets. I got my first ticket when I was 16 years old, leaving football practice at West Rowan. I came in and my grandmother, she's just shaking her head because I've got that pink piece of paper. Boy, you're paying for this one. So I remember I made an appointment with Cecil Whitley, and I went and sat down and talked with him. And he told me his story. He said, I grew up in Union County on a tenant farm, and I never missed a day of school. And because if I had, went home, I'd have to go to work in the field. And so he said, I went to Wake Forest Law School, and he says, if I can do it, anybody could do it. And then he told me what it was going to cost for him to represent me. I got my checkbook out and think, man, that's a lot of money. This is 1994, mind you. So, that's a lot of money. I said, maybe there's something to this. And so about, a couple months later, I'd gone to Davidson on a recruiting visit. On my way back, past a hay truck, there's a highway patrolman. So there's ticket number 2. So I get back to Cecil, and I'm thinking, okay, there must be something to this. And that's kind of when I made the decision, look, I'm going to go back home to Monroe because my wife's from there, and or from here rather. And that was the plan all along. I interned at the DA's office for the end of 2002 and in the summer of 2003. And started my practice in April of 2005. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. But did you come back each summer while you were in law school, or what did you do over the summers?
Yeah, so I would come back and stay with my in-laws or before we were married, stayed with them too. And I worked at a gym here after football season. I worked at a gym called the Enterprise Workout Center. So, met so many people in law enforcement through working there. And I worked there in the off season during college. I worked there on the summers during law school. And then while I was studying for the bar, I also worked there. I think I was making $6 an hour while I was studying for the bar, but got to know a lot of people, got to know, became, a local guy. I guess I've been here so long, it's obviously I am now, but as an outsider coming in, I didn't have family members that practiced law down here. I didn't have, didn't have a practice to take over that had been, built from the bottom up for me. I had to do it myself.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I don't know if that was, intentional or just kind of like the way to make some ends meet when you're not making very much money as a hungry law student like we all have to go through. But I feel like having that family business and family name, and then being in a kind of work position where you are interacting with a lot of people, like getting to do a lot of FaceTime with people. I feel like the best local lawyers, which is kind of where we're going to kind of focus a lot of our conversation, is in those relationships, because it seems like the guys that are the go-to people as a local attorney in any given place, somehow everybody knows them, whether it's a insurance person, car salesman, a contractor, somebody that's at Walmart, wherever it might be, everybody knows that person. They're like, hey, do you know this? Do you know this attorney? And it's like, yep, everybody knows that guy. Yeah. So I guess in terms of that local feel, what, as you came back from law school and kind of decided, longer term that, I want to open up my own practice, what led to that? What, was it lessons that you were learning at the DA's office, or what kind of led to that, decision to kind of open up your own shop?
Sure. So, and I need to back up a little bit, because the initial plan was to go to work for the DA's office for a couple of years.
Okay.
And then go into private practice. But
so that was an internship, or you did that after law school?
That was an internship during law school.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay.
And so when I passed the bar, I wanted to go to work for our DA's office here in Union County. And so I applied, and I got a letter from then DA Michael Parker that they had just lost some grants and they had no positions to fill. And so at that point, I made the decision to start my own practice, get on a court appointed list. I rented a little 2-room office in what's the old Belks building, which is the old Belks department store on Main Street in Monroe. My monthly rent was $400. And I started my business with $2,000. So I had to make a security deposit plus first month's rent. So now I'm down to $1,200. Painted the place myself, added some carpet, and that got my phone line, and that was in a PO box, and that was it. And then I went to court my first day, and I remember it was a Friday, and went into admin court, and somebody hired me. So I took care of a ticket for them. Just a cash transaction, walked them up to the clerk's office to pay their fines and costs of court, call my wife and say, hey, I just made $260, in like a couple seconds. I was real happy about that. Well, in all the haste of going from clerk's office to admin court, I dropped that money on the ground.
Oh man.
And so I was driving home. I'm like, man, I'm so happy. And I told my wife, listen, you're not going to believe this. I lost that money. She's like, what? She said, you got to be kidding me. Have you checked me? Look everywhere. She said, how much was it? I said, it's $260. I said, man, we were going to go to dinner. And I got home, and we're still going to go to dinner. And I carry cash in a money clip and credit cards in just like a little wallet. And I couldn't find it. So I reached down my console, between my console and my driver's seat, and I find my little wallet. And my wife says, are you sure I think I see something down there. Well, there's $260. I'm like, oh man, I found it. Great. Now I'm happy. About a month later, we got into it. She said, you remember that $260? Yeah, I planted that in your truck.
That's awesome.
But,
she kept the dream alive.
Yeah, you live and learn. But yeah, she got me on that one.
Yeah, I feel like I have kind of a similar early beginning story. I worked out of a closet in a real estate lawyer's office up the road. A great guy, great friend now, but he kind of let me do a couple of closings a month for him in exchange for basically, having this tiny office space. He allowed me to use his conference room if I was meeting with a client or whatnot. But it was, keeping that overhead down at the beginning is so critical. I just met with a lawyer a couple of probably about a month ago now that was, thinking about, hey, I'm considering opening up my own practice. I've got a stable job. I don't know if that's a good move. And I was like, you can do it. Like if you're willing to kind of stay humble and just keep your overhead low. Everybody can. I feel like maybe not everybody, but most people can make it if they really want to do that. I feel like there's a lot of that kind of mental analysis of risk and, should I leave this? But there is to me, a lot of freedom in having your own practice. And so if that kind of monetary concern is holding you up, which it's definitely going to, I mean, it's a big jump anytime you go out on your own. But I think if you keep those overhead costs low, you can make it. And in terms of that first client, I can still remember my first case. I'd sent out some letters for different traffic charges and kind of low end misdemeanor cases. And I picked up a drug paraphernalia charge. A young lady came in, met at the office. We got her through a diversion program, but charged $500 for this misdemeanor paraphernalia charge. And it felt like I'd won the lottery. It was just like, oh my gosh, this business can work. It's just such a crazy thing when that first person hires you. It's almost like shocking. It's like, oh my gosh, this is a real thing. But I do think that, having that, humility going into it and just trying to work like mad to keep those expenses low at the beginning of things is so critical. So yeah, in terms of, from those first days of your law firm, what did that kind of evolution look like as you started to grow your practice?
So I was already well known from working at the gym, and there were a couple of high profile cases, one that generated from the gym. And that was a very big paying client. That was a sexual relations with a student case that actually got some news attention. That one was within the first month of starting out. And then about 2 months in, guy makes an appointment to come see me, and he's got this brings in the newspaper, Operation Chronic. And it was this large marijuana bust. They were different grows throughout the county, and he was charged with it, 4 counts of conspiracy to traffic and 4 counts of trafficking. And he sat down and talked with me. And obviously, you're trying to think about, well, what kind of, this is a big fee. This is a big fee. What do I need to charge for this? And I said 20 grand. And he talked with me a little bit more, and he said, you know what? He said, I like you. I said, I trust you. Okay, you got a deal. And so he hired me. We worked on that case for about 2 years. There were some real problems with it, real problems with the search. We wound up pleading to maintaining a dwelling, and he got a $200 fine and unsupervised probation.
Dang, that's crazy.
So yeah, and so like after that was a really big deal. And rumor, people hear about that stuff, and so
yeah, for sure,
just a handful of things like that, and then all of a sudden, people are making appointments. All of a sudden, you need to hire some help. All of a sudden, you're overwhelmed, and it's time to get off the court appointed list because you've got so much retained work coming in that you can't juggle the two. And so, I think started in 2005, by mid of 2006. Well, no, that's not right. Mid of 2007, I was moving offices. I was actually moving into the building that I now own, but office across the hall that I actually need to get a tenant in there right now. So, but moved over here, hired a girl out of the clerk's office, and first child was born in December of 2007. And then right after that is when the economy just started dipping.
Yeah.
And my business was terribly affected by it because no one had any credit. Can't get grandma's credit card anymore because she's maxed out. It was horrible. And it was a humbling experience to have to go through being in private practice. At that point, that DA's job was looking pretty good.
Yeah.
They're still getting paychecks, and I'm worried about to sell something to make payroll. But I wound up getting back on the court appointed list and stayed on it for 2008 to about 2010. And that's when things really started coming back around for me in 2010. Hired another employee, and then just things have just continued to grow. Obviously, COVID, that hurt us all.
Yep.
It was like crickets around here.
Yeah, for sure.
But that phone wasn't ringing. I think in April of 2020, we had 14 tickets because nobody was moving. And I realized, my business with traffic tickets and DWIs, that depends on people moving. When they're not moving, I'm not making any money. But I didn't cut a single hour. Thank God we made it through, and things are really good now. But, you always think back to those humbling experiences like 2008 or 2009, and then you think about COVID, and it's like what used to be my cushion of money that I, it's more than doubled in order for me to stay in a company.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. I mean, definitely those kind of, economic recessions have a huge impact, I feel like, on the criminal defense realm. I mean, just because, everybody that since you're representing people, not corporations, it's everybody's pocketbook is affected by those type of situations. I think in terms of that kind of local guide mentality, it seems to me to be a little bit of an easier, a little bit easier to become the local guide in a smaller county. And I had Zeb Smathers on probably about a year ago now. He was, really encouraging people to kind of go back home to where they, grew up or were living, and not just feel like obligated to stay in some big city or town, just because there are ways, I think, to distinguish yourself. I grew up in Waynesville, Haywood County, so which is where Zeb is, and I think Monroe's kind of got a little bit of a similar feel to that, where there is a lot of kind of community there, people that have been living in that location for a long time, and sent their kids to the same schools, and have that kind of heritage and investment in the local feel. And I feel like, in terms of the offices that we have in the smaller counties and smaller offices, there's a lot more clients in those offices that kind of say, hey, are you guys local? Do you have somebody that's kind of been in this particular area for a while? Whereas in some of the larger markets that we're in, it doesn't really come up as a question quite as much. It's not a concern. Are you local to Wake County? Are you local to, Mecklenburg County? It's not to say that those aren't ever asked, but it seems like clients are kind of more interested in that kind of local guide flavor a lot of times in the smaller counties. So I really think that building up of that local community is, extremely important. And again, as you're kind of working in the gym and again, with your family having, been very established in the Monroe area, all of that stuff, I think that personal connection with the people really comes across. How do you kind of communicate that local flavor, if at all, to new clients that call in?
Well, look, I'm a firm believer, when in Rome, hire
Yes.
a Roman lawyer.
That's right.
My building's right across the street from the courthouse.
In the state of Union County, this is how it's done, right?
I'm not getting in the car and driving up to Asheville. We're gonna send them to you.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
That's just what you may not realize or not, but y'all helped one of my good friends. He's also my chiropractor. He was up in at a conference up there and got a speeding ticket. So as I understand it, y'all did a good job for him, but I wouldn't expect anything less. Dealing with local people. I always speak to people. I always, when I'm in public, if I'm going to get takeout at a local restaurant, I have a few drinks while I'm waiting on my takeout and talk to the bartender, get to know the bartender, get to know the people sitting by me. Hey, I'm Zach. It's good to meet you. How's your dinner? I've been a member at our local country club for as long as I've been a lawyer. Know all the employees there, know all the members there. I mean, there's not a day that goes by that I'm not representing somebody on a ticket or something, just from up there. And that's a lot of local people that you get to know and earn their respect. And, I've done a good job of that. I mean, I've been on the board of directors at the club. I was the youngest board member ever, as far as I understand. So that has helped me, build the trust of the community. Knowing that we take care of our clients, knowing that if you call Zac Cohen, you're going to be taken care of. Now, he might not win every DWI because none of us do. We lose an awful lot of them.
A lot, yeah.
But we'll fight for them. And,
yes.
And if it's a no chance that you're going to win, you figure out the best timing, and that might be let it go on for as long as they can, because they're going to lose their license and you can't get them a limited privilege. But you know what's going to be best for them. You know that today's might not be a good day for us to enter a plea, but if we continue it one more time, that day might be the right day. The court might be a little bit more lenient on you if we postpone it from today and get one more court date. So,
I think even your website really, I think, speaks to that kind of local feel. The brand video that you have up on your homepage is an incredible brand video. It's really well done. And I feel like the two things that I kind of took away from that after watching it was one, Zach's going to fight for you, which I think is a really cool thing to communicate to people, that you're going to stand up for them. But secondly, both through the images that were in the video and also from the way your tone, the way that you were communicating with people on the video, and just kind of the B-roll that you had with clients that were in the video, it was very localized. And that, to me, again, if you're kind of a local person looking for a lawyer, maybe if you're from out of town, maybe it's not the biggest like game changer. But if you're a local person, that's going to be communicated like immediately, just visually, in terms of being a local person that came across like really strong. So that was really well done.
Yeah, I put that off for years. I ran into those folks at a DWI conference in Charleston years ago and inquired with them about it a little bit. And then, one day I was just thinking, you know what, Monroe, I'm trying to think about how many. I think when I started my practice, there were 64 lawyers that were members of Union County Bar. Now I think there's over 250.
That's wild. That's a humongous growth.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, there's, you got to separate yourself from the rest of everyone. So yeah. I finally made up my mind to do it. And I think that was a great decision. I think they did a very good job with it as well. I was a little reluctant because I didn't want to have my picture on my website. You don't do that. You got. I'm like, all right, let me go to the gym, see if I can lose a little bit of weight, and then we'll take those pictures for the website. But I think, and here's another thing. I did not have a website until 2013. I built my practice from word of mouth. There was no advertising whatsoever. I didn't even have
if I can just jump in for a quick second, I think that there's a lot of people would like scoff at that and say, well, why? I mean, you have to have a website. Why not have a website? But that just shows the power of referral based marketing. I mean, like the power of building a brand in a local community and how powerful that is. Cause I think we're now in the opposite of that. And I want you to get back to wherever you were going with that, Zach, but I feel like there's so much focus on the internet side of things that the brand building side is starting to suffer. I think a lot of younger lawyers in particular should not discount referral-based marketing as the best source of clients, because you basically have a slap on the back when people are coming in ready to hire you versus you having to sell yourself to anybody. So I'm sorry to sidetrack you there for a second.
I agree with you 100%. 100%. That was, starting in 2005, riding that up and down through the economy issues back then. Coming out of it, no advertising whatsoever, still business continued to grow. But a friend of mine, he's like, Zach, you got to have a website. I'm like, man, I don't really need it. He said, no, I'm telling you, you need to have a website. People need to be able to go Google you and be able to see something other than just some of those generic things that you see like through, some of the lawyer advertising things. And so in 2013, I said, all right, buddy, I said, build me a website. And so that website is the same. The reason I was laughing earlier is because that picture from 2013,
that's awesome.
I looked a lot different. And some of my girls said, we ought to put a new picture of you up there. I'm like, yeah, I don't know yet. So we'll see. We may need to make some revisions soon, but yeah, I mean, I think that building from the ground up and building the business on the referrals and not a fancy video or something like that. I think that builds a good foundation, and then you take that good foundation, then you factor in some of the video stuff and everything and advertising, because it's a necessary evil. I mean, you got to be visual. I think that when my guy looks at my Google Analytics, the number one search that takes people to my website, say Google my name. So it's not DWI lawyer.
Yeah.
It's not that's a lawyer. It's Zac Cohen. Zac Cohen.
That's awesome.
Those are what people searching. And so it makes me think that like some of these AdWords and things like that. Well, I'm not getting a bang for my buck on that.
I agree. Yeah.
People are just Googling me. I mean, that's And I guess that's something I should be proud of.
That is the power of being the local guide, because the website is there in a lot of ways just so that people that are looking for you can find you. It's not to put yourself out there to just the general public or every potential client, although it does do that in a certain way. But that's something that I think is going to continue to get more and more important, because as everybody continues to search on these phones, and everybody keeps Google and Apple and all these companies figure out how to monetize the searches, the cheapest search is going to be the search for Zac Cohen. The cheapest search is going to be the search for James Minnick versus DWI lawyer near me, or speeding ticket lawyer near Asheville or Monroe, wherever it might be. If you're searching for that individual, it's still going to be free, because those companies want to keep people engaged in their services so they can charge on other types of ads. So that is a huge separator. If you can get people to buy into that brand, I mean, you're saving yourself so much money in advertising.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And I really and truly, I'm kind of new to the whole advertising game, because of how I built the foundation without it. And I'm sure, I mean, I believe that it does help, but I think it's more so in name recognition than it is anything else.
Totally agree. Yeah, totally agree. And I think, in terms of anybody thinking about jumping ship from wherever they are and hanging their own shingle, to me, one of the things to think about in making that determination is, what is the long-term game plan? What beyond just, what is this going to do for me in the next year? What does this jump hopefully look like 10 years down the road and 15 years down the road? And that's a hard kind of thing to think about. I wasn't thinking about that very, very much in terms of moving from the lawyer that I was working with before I opened up my own practice. It was the 10-year plan was not there. But I think that the more you can kind of have that larger forecast, if hey, I want to do traffic tickets in Monroe. When I get out of law school, I want to go do traffic tickets in Monroe. Becoming the local guide is not an overnight process. Even if you've got great connections, even if you've got, a family that's lived there for a long time, becoming the go-to person locally is not an overnight game. And so I think just, taking some of the pressure off of feeling like I have to be that right away, just take that pressure off now, because it's going to take a long time to build that brand recognition.
It really does. It's not, you don't snap your fingers and, mind you, I had some fortunate things happen to me early on, like we talked about, some of those big cases that got me some attention.
Yeah, that's huge. Especially in a small place, that's huge. That was
a different time. That's not 2022. That was 2005. It's the practice of law, especially in Union County, has changed so much in these last 17 and a half years. I mean, it's just unbelievable how much it's changed, and continues to change. I mean, it was, lunch during the week, you had prosecutors and defense attorneys went to lunch every day of the week. And then that slowly changed. And now it's like you run into them at lunch or something and you speak and they're like, oh. But we get along so well. So it's like, well, why not?
Yeah.
It's just the dynamic has changed and continues to do so. So.
Yeah. I think that's true everywhere that you go to practice. I mean, not only is every county different, but this is something that I don't talk about a lot. I routinely kind of mention how every jurisdiction in North Carolina is really its own beast. I mean, you might as well be practicing in a different universe when you cross that county line. But I think you bring up a really good point, which is it also very much evolves over time. And what practicing in Union County looked like 15 years ago, or in Buncombe County 15 years ago, it's unrecognizable because of the change of policies and personnel and the district court judges and the DAs that are practicing, the way the clerk's office handles cases, updating things into more of an electronic format, the way the discovery is issued. I mean, it is a massive change. And if you are in that world every day and you see those changes become gradual, well, it's easy to adapt as those kind of gradual changes come along. If you're just kind of moving around from one place to the next, then you're not kind of a part of those gradual changes. Every county becomes a nightmare to practice in, because then you can't even kind of have that feel. So again, in terms of becoming that local person, that I think, having that kind of past history of what practicing looked like here 10 years ago is a massive advantage. I mean, again, the lessons learned from that, and here's why we do things this way now instead of doing it this other way. If you're the person with that inside information, it's a massive advantage in terms of court personnel.
It really is. It's and the relationships that you build, and when you're working with someone every single day, even though you're not playing for the same team, you're working with this person every single day. You get to know them. They get to know you. They get to, okay, well, hey, I see you've got like 20 DWIs on tomorrow, Zach. Which can you go ahead and tip me off, say which ones are for trial? Do you have
Yes.
motions filed in any of these? And then I'll go ahead and I'll release your other 18 clients so they don't have to come to court. That's the way we had been doing things. Now that's recently changed, but through COVID and after, when we've gradually, I think Union County kind of hit the ground running. I mean, we went back to work immediately. And never really, I think we had one other shutdown, but after that, I mean, we were back at it hard. And, they would make concessions for me because of the volume of cases that I had, and didn't want the courtroom full of people. So Zach, if we're hearing a null motion on this one, you got a motion to suppress, stop, and arrest on this one, just have those two here. We'll go ahead and give you new dates for the other 18. And we'll just chip away at them like that. And that was very efficient. That worked very well. And it was good for me because, I had clients that were going to have to take a day off work.
Yeah.
We're finally back to work now. Now I've got to go to court, so I've got to take a day off work. It worked out great. And it went so smooth. But then a few months ago, things changed. And now we have to go before the judge has to rule on every motion to continue, even if it is consented to by the state. So that also, as far as court time is concerned, that slows things down.
Yeah.
I mean, there's 18 names you've got to call out. Your Honor, moving to continue this matter, no objection from the state. Okay, 10/13 is the next court date. By the time you do all that, you've burned so much court time where you could be getting pleas in, you could be getting bodies moved out of there, which is what I always try to do. I'm like, look, I'm going to go through my cases. I turn around the courtroom and say, if I'm your lawyer, come with me. Or I do a little hand gesture like this if the judge is talking, and my clients know to quietly get up, come out in the hall. I'll tell you what we're doing with your case. It'll be something to the nature of you and you stay with me. We're doing something today, like we talked about last time. Everyone else is free to go. My office will send you your court date through our email. And the reason we do that is because there's not a week that goes by that I don't get a date in the courtroom. And by the time it makes it down to the clerk's office and gets in the system, it's a different date. And so I'm like, we quit years ago. We quit giving court dates after I got them in court because people would put them in their phone, and they'd put, 10/13 in their phone. Well, by the time it gets down to the clerk's office, it's 9/13. Then they're not in court, and I've got to try my best to keep an OFA from going out. And more often than not, it's your client's not here, order for arrest, and then we're scrambling to try to get a judgment other side, get the DA to consent to it, which just burns more time. And so we found that it's a lot more efficient to just let's wait until the court date gets in the system. My paralegal goes over there every day, checks court dates. Once they're in the system, then we notify the client of the court date. So,
yeah, I think that those local relationships, like you were talking about with the DA's office, and in the past, having lunch together every day, but even in terms of kind of working through that initial part of COVID, hey, can we excuse these people? These cases are going to trial. that relationship with the local DA's office is huge. I mean, it's so important for the efficiency of the court system, so helpful to clients that might be coming in from out of state or have a long distance to drive and their case isn't going to get handled. And just a quick call or text, email, seeing them in court the day before can save, hours of time on the clerk, judges, everybody else in the courtroom's end. Obviously a ton of time on your client's end. So that to me, again, in terms of any lawyer that's kind of starting into practice, to me, one of the best things to do is really be very thoughtful about and intentional about communicating with the DA. I think sometimes we get into this mindset, especially early on in practice, that is the other side. I don't want to tip my hand too much. I don't want to, blow something. But in all honesty, I mean, you're doing your client a major disservice if you're not having those, kind of just regular conversations to where it's kind of like, okay, if it's one of Minix cases, here's what the expectation is, that this, we'll hold it open until we hear something, whatever it might be. And again, it's not as though you're looking for special treatment, but just because of that rapport that you've built up, it's like, we're going to get an answer about this. It's not, we're not going to have the ball dropped. So I think that is such a critical part. And I think that, one of my hopes through the podcast is that we can encourage better communication between the defense bar and the prosecution in each jurisdiction.
Absolutely. Could not agree with you more on that. That's on our end, we can do a better job communicating with them too.
For sure. Absolutely.
About, especially with superior court cases and stuff like that, where we're trudging through discovery, but we've got several DWI trials this week and, got 60 speeding tickets to take over there. I'll take something else that I did. I wanted to tell you this. So during COVID, I never shut my practice down. Okay. We came to work every day, and every week I would take whatever tickets I had on that Friday, even though there's no court. We have admin court on Friday, and I might have 20, 30, 40 tickets. Every week I took them over on Wednesday and worked those tickets out, because if I didn't, that was going to put me behind, but it also puts them behind.
Right.
And they were so appreciative. One ADA in particular, I worked very well with him. He was so appreciative that I was doing that, because so many weren't. So okay, we don't have to go to court, so we're not going to court.
Yeah.
I couldn't let that backlog happen in my office. I needed to move those tickets.
Yeah.
And so just like we always, we worked them out that week. We had our clients get fines and costs of court and everything, just so things wouldn't slow down so much. And just so when we open back up, we wouldn't have 1,000, 1,500 tickets of just mine that are backlogged. We got them done and we moved them. And so I think that was, they appreciated that. But, my office gets them together for me, and I take them over in a notebook and I walk right across the street, go up to the DA's office and work them out right there at the window. If I was several counties over, that probably wouldn't be happening. The fact that I can walk across the street and do it made a huge difference.
Yeah, that's a huge advantage, again, in terms of actual location, being right present there and having that kind of ease of access. But again, I think that proactivity about handling cases, because ultimately the difficulty of being a district court ADA is the docket. That's the pressure point, is just, how am I going to deal with 120 cases, 20 victims, 15 officers, 30 defense lawyers how am I going to deal with all of these people on one day and kind of, come up for air at 5:00. Obviously it's not every day, but it's a lot. I mean, it's depending on the jurisdiction, that's the difficulty that they face. And so anything that you can do, like you said, to clear up cases ahead of time, or give the DAs, a heads up 1 day or 2 days before, here's what's going on. This case is for trial. I expect, to have no witnesses, or 2, or, whatever it might be. If you can give them that, you're going to get priority in the courtroom on that next day, because they're like, I know this case is for trial and I know what to expect. So if there's 4 cases for trial, you're going to be first up, and you're going to, again, have saved your client time. You're going to have saved yourself the time of having to wait until 5 o'clock to find out that there's no more time for trials that afternoon. If you give them that little bit of information, you're going to get that respect. We did a number of pleas by waiver in a couple of counties during COVID. Judges were a little bit more, for a level 4 or 5 plea. There was a couple counties that were accepting pleas by waiver, and the DAs were through the roof on that front. That it's like we can get something done to where this backlog that we foresee of cases down the road is going to, at least be less of a beast than it already is. And so then you gain that priority longer term, because it's kind of like, well, this guy or this gal has been in here to play over the last couple of months when everybody else has been kind of just enjoying the break. So, we've been working, we're ready to get things done. And I think that especially after COVID, the DAs were ready to get stuff handled because they saw those increasing dockets, and that's their worst enemy. That's what they're fighting against, is docket control at that level. So I agree 100%. And I think your, traffic ticket, thought process, that had to have earned a ton of brownie points.
You got to be efficient. I mean, that's what they want to be efficient. Meaning the DA's office, obviously, and running that docket, but we want to be efficient too.
Yeah.
I'm not look, we all know there are times when you need to continue a case out for as long as you possibly can.
Yes.
You've got somebody that's had a moving violation 6 months ago and they get charged with 155. They're picking up another moving violation. You know that you need to push that out a year so we don't get the license suspended and everything. Yeah. So there are DWIs that, I've had losers that we knew the guy was going to lose his license. One of the most interesting ones, I had a guy drove a Channel 9 news van. He's got a DWI, blows a .18. He's losing his job. Okay. They're not going to let him drive. And plus he's going to have an interlock requirement. And so we drug it out. And he finally said, Zach, look, let's just go ahead and do this. I said, just give it one more time. I said, they're going to continue it for us one more time. And it was a Waxhaw police officer that charged him. And he wound up getting in an awful lot of trouble. The officer did. And what do you think happened to the case? And that's a win by default, but it saved them his job. That
for sure.
Just having the feeling that, look, they're going to give us one more continuous. Let's just take it, and see what happens. Because once that license is back after civil revocation, they've got their full privilege, and time can be your best friend. That's happened a bunch over the years with officers, quitting and not coming back, getting fired. And it's something that we have to be conscious of as defense attorneys. Sometimes it's not the best thing to go in there and get it done on the first appearance day.
For sure.
Sometimes it is. Sometimes you've got somebody that that blood's going to come. It's a blood draw case and it's going to come back at a 25. They know it and you know it. And they'd much rather get a regular limited driving privilege than an interlock limited driving privilege. So you're like, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and plead this, have them do a stop order on the blood. And now you're not going to have to suffer the interlock. And in cases like that, where there was no way of getting them out, there's not a null issue. You're not going to suppress the stop. You're not going to suppress the arrest. That's a win. And so timing is everything in this business.
It is. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I agree. In terms of kind of establishing yourself as the local go-to person, what if any tips do you have on that front? Because like obviously we can kind of draw a lot from the way that you've kind of built your practice over the years, but what specific tips do you have on that front?
So coming from someone who is a roofer in Salisbury to a town that you've never been to, and starting your own practice, you've got to get to know people. And I've been very fortunate in that I have gotten to know people who knew me before I was a lawyer. They knew me as a guy who answered the phone and made milkshakes at the Enterprise Workout Center. They knew me as the guy from the gym. And then, just always speaking to people, getting to know people. It's not something that happens overnight, but I'm trying to think, because I'm sitting here thinking about it, and, you know, I've been very lucky to have built the practice that I've built in a town that I didn't grow up in. I mean, that's the best advice I can give is get to know people. You've got to get to know people. You've got to get to know them personally. I don't think that the best approach is, hey, I'm Zac Cohen, I'm a new lawyer in town. Or,
Yeah.
hey, Zac, hey, I'm Zac and I'm a lawyer. I think the best approach is, hey, I'm Zac Cohen, what's your name? How are you? You know, how's your day going? How's your dinner? You know, things like that, getting to know people on a personal level, and not, I'm Zac Cohen, lawyer. That's I'm a human being before I'm a lawyer. Lawyer just happens to be what I do. That's my day job. So,
I agree.
You know,
I think I think that's so critical. And I think that, you know, one of the mistakes that I made, and it's not to say that there's no value in this, because there definitely is, but one of the mistakes I think I made kind of early on in my career is I would try to go to these kind of meet and greet networking events, or try to get like some sort of a speaking opportunity where you're kind of meeting people, but you're not establishing a personal connection. And to me, one of the things that I think over time, you know, I've found to be a really powerful way of establishing that network is one-on-one with each individual client, you know, establishing that personal rapport. And I think, you know, I'm still growing on this front, but, you know, one of the easiest ways to do that to me is anytime that you have a client in the courtroom, instead of just, you know, sitting up on the other side of the bar, the entire part of calendar call, or, you know, as you're waiting for the judge to come in, just sitting down for 2 to 5 minutes with your client, wherever they're sitting in the gallery, and just saying, you know, hey, how's life going? What, you know, what's new, and establishing that personal connection. Because no matter what happens with the case, if that person, you know, remembers you as somebody that truly cared about them, you're going to get that recommendation for anybody that they talk to down the road. So I think whereas my scheming brain was always kind of like, where can I go to establish a network? Like, what lawyer group can I get into, or what, local group can I try to join to get referrals? And it took me a really long time to be like, my clients are my best referrals. Like these are the people that I've actually done real work for. And I actually do care. Like, I actually care about getting it right and treating people the right way. So it's not even, it doesn't have to be this fake stuff that I feel like a lot of the networking events can feel like sometimes, where you're forced to establish these connections. Some people are better at that than others. And I don't think that that's necessarily my particular scene, but establishing that network to me is, for a criminal defense lawyer, a real opportunity if you're going to stay in one place for a long time, because you just get to come in contact with so many individual people.
Yeah, that makes me think about something too. So clients, absolutely. But other lawyers are,
yes.
Referrals from other lawyers go a long, long way. And so when I started back in 2005, there was an old lawyer up the street named Larry Harrington. He's recently passed away. His son, Jay, and I are good friends. Jay's a great lawyer here in Monroe. So Larry was always known to send young lawyers some business. All right. And so, Larry, Zac, I got a case up here for you. I'm going to send her down to the office. Okay. But Larry was always real quick. He said, now don't be sending out any of those letters now. And so I remember I'd gotten 2 sets of envelopes printed up, still have 1,000 of these. One regular envelopes, and the other said, this is an advertisement for legal services. Well, I bought 1,000 of them, and I still have 1,000 of them. never sent out the first letter. I've never done that. And so that approach has worked well for me. I understand that everybody can't do that, but never sent out the first letter. I do not do phone consultations, and I do not do free consultations. With the exception of the speeding tickets. Obviously, speeding tickets, those are 5 quick pennies. The DWIs are slow nickels. And so there's an old saying, Ralph Kettner from Food Line said 5 quick pennies is better than 1 slow nickel. And I agree to that to an extent, but I still want to make my slow nickels as well. But when you've got a slow nickel of a case, you make an appointment, you pay a consult fee, you bring your file in, and we sit down and we go through your file. And I'll identify the issues in the case. I'll tell you what I think about it. Obviously, we're not going to know because we still need to get videos and go through all that stuff. But at least we'll have an evaluation of the case. And then I turn them over to my paralegal who goes through a checklist with them about courts, about getting substance abuse assessment, interlock information if it's a 15 or higher, all of that stuff. And I feel like that works a whole lot better than someone calling up on the phone. Hey, I got a DWI. And you're talking to this guy on the other side of the phone. You can't see him. You can't really get a feel of who this person is. And so those are two of my big rules too. I used to do free consultations, and what I found with free consultations, somebody will come waste an hour of your time, and then they'll say, "I'll get back with you," and they don't.
That's not right.
So or they go.
Once you get that, I'll get back with you.
Yeah, Zac Cohen said he's going. Yeah, Zac said he's going to do it for this. Can you do any better? So that's something. We get some skin in the game up front.
I think that getting in that personal connection is so important, and as much as we are kind of continually moving more and more to this kind of everything happens online, quick, easy, get me my information immediately. I want it by the internet. And if I have to, I'll call somebody. Like that's the mentality. When you actually sit down with somebody in the office, it really is a very different interaction that's able to occur in that environment. And obviously for, some people who may live, further away, that's not necessarily possible, but that is, when you can communicate with another human person in a physical space together, it's a total different communication. So, while we do consults at our office, I'd say primarily by phone, and we're happy to do them by phone. If there's an opportunity to meet with somebody in the office, that's always preferred. I was trying at the beginning of COVID, when everything was shut down and we were doing everything by phone, I was trying to get clients to kind of buy into the Zoom mentality. Cause I was like, if I can talk to you face to face, it's going to have like a different impact than if we're just communicating by voice, but that never really took off. So to me, it's still like kind of either in person or in person is best. I mean, that's just you get to read the other person, but more importantly, the client gets to kind of actually see how you operate and kind of, gets a different trust level. And that's the whole relationship, right? Is built on trust. So having that, firsthand assessment is so critical.
Yep. Couldn't agree more.
Well, Zac, anything else you have for young lawyers or kind of on the local front, any other advice on that end of things?
The one thing that I think that, especially in the realm of DWI defense, it's very complex. We know that there's an awful lot that you've got to learn.
Yes,
and you're not going to get the experience unless you try the cases. You've got to get in there and you've got to try the cases, as intimidating as it can be, as nervous as you might get. You've got to try them and do the work. The DWI is not a ticket. It's not something that you take over and negotiate on a pink sheet. It's something where you have got to work and you've got to look at all angles and you've got to know the law. And it takes a while to build a good practice in defending people for DWIs. But I'll also say this: charge accordingly. This area is difficult and you've got to be good at what you do and you've got to charge accordingly. I mean, you need to make money. We all need to make money and we don't need to be ashamed to talk about it. And I don't think there's any problem with, asking them, like, hey, Jake, I've got this DWI client coming in. What do you think I should charge for it? Now, I know I shouldn't charge as much as you are, but I don't want to be so low that I'm just, pulling my hair out because I'm not making any money on this. I'm putting all this time into this case and I've only charged $2,500 for it or whatever. So don't be afraid to go ask a lawyer that you respect, hey, how much should I be charging here? Don't be afraid.
Yeah, it definitely feels like a taboo subject for whatever reason. And it is, I think, important to have communications about that. And, to bounce your case off of another attorney. I mean, to me, like you said, DWI cases are complex, they're challenging, and that scares a lot of lawyers to basically just say, well, I'll just, take a case on and kind of have the plan be to plea, and a plea may be the right outcome in some cases, but the fight first mentality to me should be always present. It should be kind of like, if there is an issue, it's a client's decision, but at least I'm going to let them know about this issue. So bouncing those cases off of another lawyer, that's what allows me, I think, to charge a reasonable but fee that you can live off of, because of the fact that you're going to be putting the work in on that front. I think where the low fees come in on the DWI front is, basically, we're this case is going to be pled. Like, I mean, literally, that's if you're not planning on going into it and exploring every angle, doing all of the groundwork, then yeah, I mean, you can charge a lot less, but you have to go into it to me with that fighter's mentality, because you can't, even if one client would be a plea and another one go to trial. If you're doing the same level of work plea wise for everybody, you're just missing those opportunities, and clients that have the opportunity to really have that outcome of a dismissal or not guilty on their case, that are looking for that, get that opportunity. Again, with your video, that was, something that really struck home with me, is it's just kind of like, this guy's going to be a warrior in the courtroom.
Well, and we cannot negotiate. I mean, the legislature will not let us plea bargain on DWIs,
right?
Which I think is ridiculous, because we could cut our docket in half if we could do like we do in South Carolina on the first offense. It's a low blow, and get like a careless and reckless for it, where you don't have to deal with the limited driving privilege. I don't understand that. I wish that things could be reexamined, and because there's such a complaint about a backlog of cases. The reason why there's a backlog is because we can't negotiate them. every DWI.
Yeah, it's not the defense's problem.
I mean, look, everyone that comes in, it's for trial. It's for trial until, in doing your work and watching the videos, seeing the officer's file, looking at issues, until you're fully satisfied that there's not an issue in this case that you can win. Only then does it become for plea, unless it's a situation where you're dealing with a blood draw, and you can kind of, you at your first look, okay, stop's good, arrest is good, no pretrial release issues. And you had how many? Okay, well, we can maybe argue one of these issues. I don't feel like in front of any of our judges they're going to bite on that. Or we can enter a plea early, have them do a stop order on the blood, and that way you don't have to deal with an interlock. And most folks they'll weigh those options. And I've only had a handful. I'm trying to think about how many of those I've done over the years. Not many. It's not. Yeah, there's not many.
Yeah, there's not many. I mean, okay, I agree.
Yeah, we probably need to plea this if that interlock is what's most important to you. But other than that, everything that comes through the door, how many of them have you lost that you thought were slam dunks? But how many of them have you won that you thought, I don't know, this is crazy, and then you pull the rabbit out of the hat.
I've had a couple of conversations with lawyers recently where the case wasn't great for the defense. It wasn't anything that was like, well, there's the main issue, but at the end of the day, it's like, go make the state work for it. I mean, it's going to be the same outcome regardless. I mean, if this particular judge is not going to impose a trial tax on pushing the case to trial, no harm, no foul, just make them prove their case. So I totally agree with that. I feel like, half the time you can't even meaningfully assess the tribal issues until you get all that discovery back. I mean, yes, there's some things that you can get from your client where it's kind of like, well, okay, maybe that does sound like a null issue, or there's a problem with the stop based on what you're telling me. But most of the time, until you get that DWIR back and body cam and dash cam and have everything in front of you to look at, it's hard to meaningfully assess what the issues are until you get a chance to look at that. So I totally agree. I think, and that's one reason why I think as a defense bar as a whole, we are undercharging because all that stuff is not happening consistently enough. That really just needs to be the expectation level.
Well, and something you said just made me think about something. recently, when we had the DWI court going on, we were trying so many of them. I mean, just, it was unbelievable how many cases we were having to try in a week's time. I had several would-be level 1 convictions because there was a child in the car. Well, on several of those trials, the state was not able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt the age of the child. Okay. And so the judge found my client to be level 5. Several times that's happened. And so, because they didn't establish the child's age, there was a kid in the car. Well, that's not enough. That's not proof beyond a reasonable doubt. So, with that grossly aggravating fact, and that's huge.
That's huge. I mean, that's as good as winning the DWI to some extent. I mean, that's a huge difference maker. You still get a privilege. You're not looking at all that, jail time and supervised probation. I mean, that's a massive, massive win.
Yeah. Other advice for young lawyers just getting started: figure out who's going to give you credit for scram time if you've got a level 2 or a level 1. We're pretty good about that over here, but some won't. And that's huge as well. I mean, when you can wear a scram device for more than 90 days and wipe out 7 days of jail, or 20 days after 120 days on the scram. I mean, that's significant.
What's your process for doing that with each individual judge? Just based on what other lawyers are telling you, do you approach the judge? What's your process for figuring that out?
But ask the guys in town that do a lot of DWI work. It's not, all you need to do is just go sit in the courtroom a couple of times and you figure out who's got the volume of cases and go ask those guys. Say, yes. Hey, I've got a level 2 coming up. It's going to be for plea. Do you think that I might be able to get credit for the scram? And your answer is going to be, well, in this courtroom, yeah, but maybe not in the next one. So, I mean, it's knowing that is important. I've seen
big deal.
I've seen lawyers come to town from other counties and they've got a level 2 and their client's done more than 90 days on the scram, and they ask for that credit and they don't get it.
Yeah,
they get 18 months supervised probation, 7 days on a schedule set by a probation officer.
Yeah. So, no, it's important. I mean, I've seen a judge who I thought would be kind of very open in terms of sentencing based on other sentences and different cases that I've had in front of her, but didn't want to accept the scram because, she thought it was a wealthy person's remedy to the situation. And, not everybody's getting the same treatment, which I can understand. She allowed me to continue that case to a different date. She said, I'm not going to speak for everybody else. And so we got, but, knowing that going into it is really important. I mean, knowing if a judge is going to buy into the sentence. And again, I think, a lot of that is through observation, talking to other attorneys, asking to approach the bench with the DA, whatever it might be. But that's a huge, and again, all goes back to being that local person. I mean, you just have a different sense of those things if you're in and out of that courtroom every day and waiting around and seeing what's happening in the downtime and what other attorneys are doing with things. I mean, there's just a huge learning curve that is outside of the textbooks that happens from watching that day in, day out court.
There are instances here where you may have local attorneys got a level 2 DWI that's for plea, and client has been instructed by local attorney to go ahead and be ready to pay your fines and costs of court today. You've got the assessment, you've done the classes, you've done more than 90 days on the scram. Walking out of the courtroom unsupervised probation on level 2. Because that judge, if you comply with all the terms of his judgment, he doesn't feel like there's a need to supervise you. So he puts you on unsupervised probation. That's huge for somebody who's level 2. But not everybody knows that.
Right. Yeah. It's a massive advantage for your client to have that information up front and to avoid those type of situations. So yeah, I think, we in the initial web-based world, I think everybody kind of moved away from this local importance of being the person. Hey, if I could build a website, then I can kind of put my name out there everywhere. And I do think that as more and more of us kind of become so used to operating in a kind of non-personal interaction with buying things on Amazon or having a lot more web-based communications, calls with people that we used to would have gone in and met with in person or talked to and shook their hand. I think there will be kind of a reverse course at some point where that personal connection, personal interaction is going to mean a lot more, because it's going to be different than what you experience at any other business that you communicate with. So the more you can bring that personal flavor and particularly maybe in our industry, the local flavor to the communication, the better off that you're going to be. So Zac, you do it incredibly well. I mean, you definitely are a warrior for clients. You can tell based on results and everything you're putting out there that you care about the people that you represent, which is an awesome model for us as a defense bar to have witness to. So very much appreciate all the insights and giving all this advice to the audience.
Absolutely, man. It's my pleasure.
If you found the information in this podcast to be valuable, I simply ask that you pay it forward and share this podcast with another member of the legal community. Also, if you would leave us a rating or a review on whatever platform you are listening on, I would greatly appreciate it.